Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When a reclusive veteran receives a threatening letter from a power-hungry HOA, he uncovers a web of lies, forgeries, and midnight sabotage. What begins as a property dispute spirals into all-out war, and he's not backing down without a fight. This is not your average neighborhood drama. The letter showed up on a Tuesday morning, tucked crookedly in my mailbox like whoever delivered it didn't want their fingerprints associated with the thing. I had just finished feeding the goats and was on my way back to the house when I spotted the Ridgepoint Glens HOA logo stamped in pretentious gold at the top of the envelope. For a second, I honestly thought it was junk mail, some overly confident advertisement trying to lure me into community membership like a gym brochure. But the envelope was thick. The kind of thick that screams legal trouble, and the return address was the HOA office barely a mile down the hill. That alone earned it a raised eyebrow. I tore it open on the porch. The first line already set my teeth on edge. Dear associated user of our private infrastructure. They somehow managed to make it sound both bureaucratic and personally insulting. The letter laid out two options, both of them delusional. Option 1, pay a $6,000 initial integration fee and sign their membership agreement within 14 days. Option 2, cease the use of HOA-maintained private access road immediately. According to them, my daily drive to civilization counted as unauthorized use of their hard-earned asphalt. I stood there, scratching the back of my head, rereading the paragraphs written in the tone of someone who thinks the law begins and ends with their clipboard. My name is Avery Colebrook. I own 7 acres of forested hill that have been in my family since before Ridgepoint Glens was even a blueprint. My land relies on a single legal lifeline, a state-recorded easement for the access road carved back in the 1970s, nearly 30 years before anyone thought of building a HOA kingdom down the slope. Every owner of my land has had the right to that road, permanently, unconditionally, forever. HOA or no HOA, the letter didn't advise or request. It threatened. It hinted at fines, enforcement actions, and something called revocation of discretionary passage. I had no idea what the hell that even meant. It sounded like something a self-appointed medieval baron would say before shutting the castle gate. I grabbed my folder with all my property records, deeds, surveys, easement documents yellowed but legally beautiful, and sat at the table to draft a response. Before writing anything, I called the number listed in the letter. The phone rang only twice before a clipped voice answered, Ridgepoint Glens Homeowners Association, President Bexley speaking. Perfect, straight to the dragon. President Bexley, I said as calmly as I could muster, this is Avery Colebrook. I received your letter, and... She cut me off like she'd been waiting her entire life for this moment. Mr. Colebrook, yes, finally. We've been trying to establish order regarding road usage, and you happen to be the last unregistered party. We have rules here. I'm not part of your HOA, I said. My property is separate. The road is subject to an easement recorded by the state. Your easement, she interrupted with the condescending sweetness of a kindergarten teacher explaining gravity to a toddler, does not override the fact that this road is HOA property. You use it, therefore you must pay and follow our regulations. It is time you join the community officially. I stared into the distance and took a slow breath. Ma'am, that's not how easements work. There was a dangerous pause on the other end of the line. Mr. Colebrook, she said sharply, if you prefer the hard route, we can pursue enforcement. We expect your compliance. Not happening, I answered and hung up before she could rehearse another threat. I spent the next 20 minutes writing a refusal that would have made my old commanding officer proud. I attached a copy of the easement, certified by the county, and politely informed the HOA that any attempt to obstruct or interfere with the road constituted a criminal violation. I printed 2 copies, mailed one by certified post, and emailed the other for good measure. For a moment, I thought that was the end of it. Wishful thinking. That evening, as I carried firewood to the shed, I saw headlights inching along the ridge road. 2 SUVs, slow as vultures circling an injured deer. They stopped, took pictures of the pavement, the signs, and the turnoff to my property, as if they were conducting military reconnaissance. I stood there in the dark, arms crossed, and watched until they noticed me. The SUVs sped off without even pretending to hide what they were doing. So much for a misunderstanding. I realized then that this wasn't just paperwork or a bored HOA board looking for something to do. They were probing, testing, taking inventory, preparing for something. And I had the distinct feeling that the letter I received wasn't an invitation. It was a warning shot. 2 days later, just after sunrise, I loaded a crate of vegetables into the back of my truck and headed toward town. It was supposed to be a simple morning run. Grab supplies, stop by the hardware store, maybe reward myself with a breakfast biscuit. I didn't even make it a quarter mile down the road before my plan died a violent death. The road was blocked. Not just blocked, fortified. 3 massive concrete barriers sat squarely across the narrow bend where the forest pressed closest to the asphalt, positioned so precisely that someone had measured the placement. A brand new metal gate stretched between them, a bright red arm with a reflective strip, the kind meant for parking garages, not secluded mountain access roads. And flanking the whole setup were 2 men in navy jackets with Ridgepoint Glen security printed on the back in bold white letters. They weren't holding weapons, but their posture carried the kind of arrogance found only in people who think they're bulletproof because they're wearing matching windbreakers. I slowed to a crawl and stepped out, leaving the truck idling. "Morning," I said, because Southern manners die hard. The man on the left didn't return the greeting. He simply held up a hand like a traffic cop who'd been given a prop badge in a school play. "Road is closed to unauthorized users. Please return to your residence." I looked at the gate, then at him, then back at the gate. "This is my access road. I have easement rights. Move the barrier." "You are not registered as a Ridgepoint Glens resident," he recited, eyes flat. "Only registered residents and approved parties may use this section of road." I felt my jaw tighten. "I don't need to be registered. This road serves as the legally protected ingress and egress point for my property. And you're obstructing it." "Sir," the other guard chimed in, "we're following direct instructions from the HOA president." "Then the HOA president," I said, leaning in slightly, "is about to get educated by the county sheriff." I pulled out my phone and dialed the non-emergency number. While waiting, I took out my chest-mounted body cam, an old habit from deployment that had saved me more than once, and clicked it on. The guards stiffened as soon as they noticed the red light recording. "Just so we're all clear," I said aloud, "you are blocking the only exit from my property." One of them shifted his weight. "Sir, step back from the barrier." "I'm not touching your damn barrier," I said. "I'm simply documenting this stupidity." The sheriff's office picked up. I explained the situation as factually as possible, gave them my coordinates, and ended the call. The guards stayed frozen, clearly unsure if they should escalate or retreat. Finally, the older one exhaled loudly, crossed his arms, and said nothing else. It took about 20 minutes for the patrol car to arrive. Deputy Hanson, a broad-shouldered guy with a salt and pepper beard and the patience of a saint, rolled down his window and sighed like he had already predicted this exact mess. "All right," he said, stepping out. "Which one of you wants to explain why there's a barrier on a recorded state easement?" The guards immediately pointed at each other, as if betrayal was part of their training. Then one of them muttered, "HOA directive. President Bexley said the road is for members only. She said this section is private HOA infrastructure." Deputy Hanson rubbed his forehead. "Lord, give me strength." Then he turned to me. "You got your documents?" I handed him the folder. He'd seen it before during a dispute with a different neighbor years back, so he barely needed to skim it. "Yup, still valid." He walked to the barriers. "Move these." "Sir, our orders." One guard started. Hanson snapped his fingers sharply. "Orders don't override state law, and you don't outrank an easement. Move the damn blocks or I'll cite both of you for obstruction." The guards reluctantly started removing the metal arm. They radioed someone, probably to report that their barricade had lasted approximately 1 morning coffee's worth of time. Then the Lexus arrived. Karen Bexley stepped out wearing a cream-colored jacket and sunglasses even though the sun hadn't cleared the tree line yet. She looked like she was arriving at a charity gala instead of a crime scene. "Deputy," she called, strutting toward us. "You cannot force my security team to remove HOA property." Hanson held up a hand, stopping her mid-stride. "Ma'am, you cannot obstruct a lawful easement. That's not HOA property. That's a criminal violation." "This is our road," she snapped. "It runs through our community. Therefore, it is subject to our regulations." "No, ma'am," Hanson replied, already sounding tired. The easement predates your community by several decades. That road could be paved in gold, diamond-encrusted, and scented with French perfume. It still belongs to the state and the easement holder. Karen turned on me with a venomous glare. You're abusing our generosity, Mr. Colebrook. You think you can hide behind some outdated paperwork? It's legally binding, I said calmly. Unlike your fantasy rulebook. Her face twisted. You will regret this. We will not tolerate freeloaders. Deputy Hanson stepped between us. Ma'am, unless you'd like to spend your morning in the back of my cruiser, I suggest you take a breath and stand down. The look she gave him was pure hate dressed up as indignation, but she backed off and stalked toward her car. The guards finished opening the road. I drove through slowly, giving them a little wave just to salt the wound. As I made it to the bottom of the hill, I checked my mirror. Karen stood in the middle of the road, arms crossed, staring after me like I had just kicked down the gates to her kingdom. Whatever this was, it wasn't over, not by a long shot. The morning after the blockade incident, I woke up with the kind of clarity you only get after someone tries to box you into your own property. I made coffee, fed the goats, checked the perimeter cameras, and for a moment allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, Karen had burned through her bag of tricks. People like her usually run out of steam when confronted with actual law enforcement. But then the universe chuckled, and FedEx rolled up my driveway. The driver handed me a thick envelope stamped with "Urgent, Documents Enclosed," HOA letterhead. Again, I signed for it, thanked the guy, and took it inside, already preparing myself for whatever new hallucination of authority they had cooked up overnight. Inside was a neatly stapled document packet titled Road Use Agreement, 1994. According to this masterpiece, the former owner of my property had allegedly acknowledged the necessity of HOA oversight and agreed that all future owners would be obligated to join the Ridgepoint Glens Association. The signature at the bottom was supposed to belong to Harold B. Colebrook, my uncle's cousin. The problem? Harold had broken his right hand in a tractor accident the year that document was supposedly signed. He couldn't even hold a pen. Also, he had the handwriting of a frantic squirrel, and this signature looked like something lifted from a mortgage commercial. I set the pages down and laughed, because the alternative was swearing loudly enough to scare the goats. It wasn't just a sloppy forgery, it was insulting. They hadn't even tried to match the formatting of county-approved templates. The font didn't exist in the 90s. One of the paragraphs referenced a HOA policy enacted in 2011. It was like Karen had asked ChatGPT to forge a legal document and hit generate without proofreading. I grabbed my keys, folder, and the forged agreement and drove straight to the county land records office. The clerk on duty, a guy named Brooks with an encyclopedic knowledge of property filings and an energy level permanently set to "not my circus, not my monkeys," took one look at the papers and raised an eyebrow so high it nearly entered a new tax bracket. "This is fake," he said flatly. "I figured," I replied. He pulled up the digital archives, then the physical ones. No document even remotely resembling this agreement existed. The real easement paperwork, filed in 1976, stood alone as the sole governing record. Brooks printed me a certified statement confirming the forgery, complete with his official signature and the county seal. I thanked him and headed home, feeling that familiar mix of irritation and amusement. HOA politics had escalated from annoying to criminal in under 72 hours. That had to be some kind of speed-run record. When I turned into my driveway, I heard machinery before I saw it, a low rumble, metallic scraping, and the distinct beeping sound of a truck reversing. My stomach tightened. I accelerated and came around the last bend to find a landscaping crew on my property. Not near it, not adjacent, on it. They had parked a flatbed truck partially on my grass, unloaded tools, and were digging a trench along the edge of my fence line. A man in a neon vest walked toward me, holding a clipboard with the defeated posture of someone who had taken the wrong job on the wrong day. "You Avery Colebrook?" he asked. "Unfortunately for you," I said. "Yes." He handed me the clipboard. "We're here for the mandatory fire pathway inspection, ordered by Ridgepoint Glens. They said you approved it." I stared at him. Do I look like a man who would approve strangers digging holes on his land without notice? "Well," he said, glancing back at his workers, "they gave us a document with your signature." I held up the forged agreement still in my hand. "Let me guess, this signature." The man studied it and winced. "Yep, that's the one." "That's a forgery, and you are trespassing. Shut your equipment down right now." He hesitated. "Ma'am from the HOA said you would say that." "Ma'am from the HOA," I repeated slowly, "is about to get you arrested if you don't leave." His eyes widened. "All right, shut it down. Pack it up." Workers scrambled to load tools back into the truck. One of them, bless his heart, asked, "Can we just finish the trench? We're almost done." "Sure," I said, "right after I build a trench around your house." They moved faster after that. I stepped to the side, activated my body cam again, and called the sheriff's office. By the time Deputy Hanson arrived, the crew was nearly gone, but I had plenty of footage. I explained the forged document, the fake signature, and the fact that the HOA had tried to use unauthorized contractors to dig on my property without consent. Hanson shook his head. "This is starting to look coordinated," he said. "They're testing boundaries." "I noticed," I said. "You want to press charges?" "Absolutely." He wrote up a trespassing incident, took photos, and assured me the department would be reviewing the HOA's actions as a pattern. After he left, I spent the rest of the afternoon installing new cameras, hidden ones this time, facing every angle of the road and my property entrance. I also anchored a steel bollard behind the main gate, the kind meant to stop a truck if needed. Overkill? Maybe. But at this point, HOA tactics had surpassed the realm of petty annoyance and entered paramilitary cosplay territory. By sunset, everything was quiet again. Too quiet. Which, in my experience, meant someone somewhere was planning their next move. And I was done being polite about it. I woke up before dawn the next morning, not because I'm one of those rise at 4 and dominate the day types, but because something metallic clanged in the distance. It wasn't the sound of a normal vehicle or a passing truck. It had that hollow, echoing ring of metal hitting metal. Deliberate, repetitive, and far too close to the road leading out of my property. My gut tightened instantly. I pulled on boots, grabbed a flashlight, and headed toward the driveway, the air still cold enough to sting my nose. As I approached the bend where the tree line thinned, my flashlight hit something that made my brain pause for half a beat. There, planted directly across the easement road, were 3 thick steel posts, each at least waist high, welded into place, and already surrounded by fresh concrete that still glistened under the beam. And behind them, half shrouded in darkness, sat a white pickup truck with its headlights off. 4 figures in dark clothing worked quickly. One held a welding torch, another shoveled leftover concrete mix from a bucket, and 2 more were lifting a 4th post from the truck bed like they were installing battlefield fortifications. For a moment, I thought maybe I was still dreaming, because who the hell wakes up at 5 in the morning, drives into the woods, and installs a permanent barricade on someone else's easement like it's a church picnic project? But the smell of hot steel hit my nose, and that snapped the reality in place. They weren't just blocking my road, they were sealing it. The camera mounted on the pine tree to my right blinked red as it recorded everything. I stepped forward slowly, letting them hear my boots crunch the gravel. The man with the shovel turned around first, eyes widening like a raccoon caught raiding a fridge. "Shit," he whispered. "Morning," I said. "Working early, I see." The welder killed his torch with a hiss. "Sir, stand back," he barked. "This is HOA business." "Funny," I replied, "because it looks like felony obstruction of an easement." One of the men, stocky shaved head, wearing a Ridgepoint Glens lanyard like it was a badge of honor, walked toward me with the kind of swagger men only get after being yelled at by a middle-aged HOA president for too long. "Mr. Colebrook," he said, "you were warned. You chose not to comply. This road belongs to the HOA, and per our updated regulations," I cut him off. "Your regulations don't override recorded state law." He stepped closer. "Well, we override you." He said it with the confidence of someone who truly believed HOA bylaws carried the same weight as the Constitution. I could smell the energy drink on his breath. Before I could respond, he reached out and grabbed my arm, not hard, but firmly enough to make a point. "Wrong move. You don't put your hands on someone who spent half his adult life in military engineering units handling explosives, combat tools, and 12-foot-tall assholes screaming orders." I shifted my weight, twisted his wrist down, and stepped sideways. His arm folded like a cardboard hinge, and he went straight to his knees with a yelp. One of the other men lunged toward me, swinging the handle of a sledgehammer like a club. I pivoted, grabbed his arm, and used his momentum to send him stumbling face first into the steel post they'd just planted. He hit it with a grunt and dropped the hammer. The welder rushed forward next, torch still warm, but stopped dead when I raised my phone and pointed it at him. I'd think twice, I warned. You threatened me with that thing and it turns from trespassing into aggravated assault. He hesitated. Good choice. The fourth guy, a tall, lanky type, ran straight into the woods, branches snapping behind him as he vanished into the darkness. Classic. The stocky one on his knees was moaning, clutching his elbow. You broke my arm. Actually, you broke it, I said. Gravity helped. I stepped back, keeping all three visible, and called the sheriff. I didn't shout, didn't panic, didn't raise my voice. I wanted my calm tone clearly recorded on the body cam. When Deputy Hanson arrived, the sun was just lifting over the ridge, lighting up the fresh concrete that HOA commandos had poured, like they were prepping for a medieval siege. Hanson crouched beside the barricade, touched the still warm concrete, then looked at the welder. You boys are aware this is illegal as hell, right? We were carrying out HOA orders, the welder muttered. And I was carrying out the Lord's work when I ate 3 donuts yesterday, Hanson replied. Doesn't make it righteous. An ambulance arrived for the guy with the injured arm. As they loaded him, he tried again. Deputy, arrest him. He attacked us. I didn't say a word. I just tapped the body cam clipped on my chest. Hanson nodded. Yeah, we'll be reviewing the footage. Real sorry if your plan to intimidate a homeowner went downhill. The 2 remaining men were detained for questioning. The welder kept repeating, we thought we were allowed. She said we were allowed. She, of course, being Karen Bexley. Hanson looked at me as the last man was escorted into the patrol car. This is escalation, he said. Serious escalation. No kidding, I replied. You want to file charges? I want to file every charge possible. He smiled grimly. Thought so. After they left, I stood staring at the steel posts. They weren't just a barrier, they were a message. A very loud, very stupid message. So I recorded everything, took wide shots, close shots, time-stamped shots, and saved them in 3 different folders. Evidence is best collected when emotions are high, but hands are steady. I spent the next hour unbolting what I could and marking the rest for removal by a professional crew. By the time I headed back to the house, the morning sun was fully up, painting the forest gold. It should have been peaceful, but the quiet felt different now, like a lull before something worse. HOA had stopped pretending. They weren't negotiating anymore. They were declaring war. By the next morning, the videos from my cameras had already circulated through half the sheriff's department. Deputy Hanson texted me at 8 sharp. HOA is scrambling. Expect noise. I didn't know what noise meant exactly, but as it turned out, it meant everything short of a marching band parading down my driveway. The noise began with digital warfare. Around mid-morning, my phone buzzed with notifications from the local community Facebook groups, the same cheerful digital ghettos where people argued about trash pickup schedules and lost cats. Only today's topic was me. Someone from HOA, and I'd bet my entire goat herd it was Karen using her burner profile, Linda J., posted a dramatic novel-length rant accusing me of being a violent rogue landowner, an unhinged threat to the community, and my personal favorite, a radical anti-HOA extremist. Several HOA loyalists flooded the comments with tales of me swinging tools at neighbors, blocking children from playing near the road, and threatening residents who tried to have friendly conversations. None of it was remotely true, but truth had never stopped Karen before. I reported the post, screenshotted every comment, and filed it away. Digital defamation was still defamation. An hour later, noise level 2 kicked in. A red fire department truck rolled up to my driveway, lights flashing but siren off. 2 inspectors stepped out, one wearing a bright yellow jacket labeled Fire Marshal, the other from the building department. They exchanged an awkward look when I met them at the gate. Mr. Colebrook, the fire marshal asked. We received multiple reports from the Ridgepoint Glens HOA about potential fire hazards on your property. I raised an eyebrow. Multiple reports. Probably submitted by the same person, I'm guessing. The building inspector cleared his throat. They said you had stacks of flammable material obstructing your fire access route. And, a quote, improvised explosive traps. I stared at them for a solid 3 seconds. Improvised explosive traps. That's what the complaint said, the marshal confirmed in a tone that suggested he, too, wanted to punch whoever filed it. Gentlemen, I said, sweeping an arm toward the property, you're welcome to look. My only explosive today is caffeine, and it's in my kitchen. They did a walkthrough, checked the tool shed, the wood stacks, the gate. Everything was clean, organized, and boring. On the way back, the marshal chuckled nervously. "This is one of the neatest homesteads I've ever inspected." "I try," I said. Off the record, he added, "We've been getting hammered by HOA complaints all week. Same person, same tone, same signature phrases. I think your neighbor might be misusing county services." "Wouldn't be the first time today," I muttered. They left, mildly embarrassed, and I barely had time to exhale before noise level 3 arrived. 2 SUVs, silver matching, rolled up to the edge of my property like synchronized swimmers. Out stepped 4 HOA board members, their matching polo shirts tucked in with the precision of a cult meeting. They didn't ring the bell or call out. They simply stood there, filming my house, my gate, my signs, and even my damn mailbox from various angles, mumbling to each other like they were auditioning for a true crime documentary. I stepped outside with my body cam already running. "Need something?" I asked. A woman holding a clipboard spoke without looking at me. "We're collecting evidence for the association's legal case." "Evidence of what?" "That remains to be determined," she said primly. I laughed. "You're not even trying to sound sane anymore." One of the men spoke up. "We have reason to believe you are operating an unauthorized security installation." "You mean my cameras?" "The ones I installed after your HOA goons tried to weld my road shut." They ignored that. The clipboard woman took a photo of my welcome mat. My welcome mat. It said, "Beware of goat." Hardly a war crime. I took a big step toward them. "You're on private property. Leave." "We are on an easement portion," the man insisted. "That easement gives me rights," I said. "Not you." I raised my phone and started dialing Hansen again because, at this point, I could probably send him a punch card for frequent calls. That's when the clipboard lady panicked. "We're leaving." "We're leaving," she snapped, waving the others toward the SUV. But as she climbed in, I caught a glimpse of a folder poking from her bag, stamped with the county's road commission emblem. That wasn't HOA property. That was something else. Something bigger. They sped off before I could ask questions. The fourth wave of noise showed up in my inbox 20 minutes later, a forwarded copy of a complaint filed to the county's road commission claiming my easement had expired due to lack of compliance with HOA environmental standards. I stared at the page. They were escalating their attack. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was an attempt to erase the legal foundation of my property access entirely. I forwarded the complaint to my lawyer, Gina, along with everything else: videos, screenshots, photos, timestamps. She called within minutes. "Avery," she said without preamble, "they're trying to create an administrative avalanche." I figured, "We're shutting it down." "You think they'll stop?" Gina laughed darkly. "No, but they'll bleed for it." That made me smile. Before sunset, I activated 2 more hidden cameras, updated my security settings, and backed up all evidence to 3 separate encrypted drives. By the time I sat down for dinner, I had a neat, growing, beautifully organized digital coffin being built for the HOA 1 file at a time. Noise? Bring it. I can be loud too. The next morning began with a silence so heavy it felt staged. After 5 straight days of HOA theatrics, I'd come to expect some kind of idiocy by 8 a.m. sharp, but instead of phone alerts or engines rumbling outside, there was nothing, not a peep. Even the neighbor's hounds didn't bark. My land felt like the calm eye of a storm, unnervingly still, waiting for the other half of the hurricane to slam through. I didn't have to wait long. Around 9, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. The caller ID said County Roads Commission. My stomach sank. I answered, bracing myself. "Good morning," a clipped voice said. "This is Administrator Lanning from the Jackson County Roads Commission. We've received a petition regarding the status of your easement. We need you to appear today at 11:30 to address potential discrepancies." "Discrepancies," I repeated. "My easement hasn't changed since the 1970s. "That's precisely why we need clarification," Lanning replied. "We have conflicting documentation." Conflicting documentation. That was HOA code for "we forged more paperwork." I agreed to attend, hung up, and immediately called Gina. She answered mid-sip of something that sounded like pure caffeine. "That was fast," she said. They made their move. "Roads Commission hearing. Today." "Perfect," she said. "Get your binder. I'll meet you there." The commission building sat in a squat brick structure wedged between a diner and a CPA office. When I pulled into the lot, I saw something that made me actually laugh out loud. 3 Ridgepoint Glens SUVs lined up like parade floats, and standing outside them, wearing the same smug determination she'd greeted me with since this nightmare started, was Karen. She was dressed like she was about to testify in front of Congress. Crisp suit, hair sprayed into helmet form, sunglasses that probably cost more than my truck's transmission. She spotted me and smirked as if she'd already won. Inside, the hearing room was small, fluorescent lit, and filled with folding chairs. The commission members sat behind a long desk, papers stacked in neat piles. A projector displayed a scan of what appeared to be, oh fantastic, another fraudulent road use agreement. This one claiming the easement had been nullified by environmental alterations 20 years ago. Karen sat with her board members in the row behind me. I didn't have to turn around to feel their smug little grins burning holes in the back of my head. The commission chair cleared her throat. We are here to determine whether the easement granted to Mr. Avery Colebrook remains legally valid. Before I could speak, one of the HOA board members, an amateur lawyer with a voice like a dying leaf blower, jumped to his feet, holding a thick binder. The association submits evidence proving that the easement has expired due to substantial modifications of the original roadway. Per section, Gina stood up so sharply her chair screeched, "Objection!" Then she corrected herself, or whatever the commission equivalent of an objection is. The room chuckled nervously. The chairwoman frowned. "Ma'am, please wait for your turn." Gina stepped forward anyway. "This evidence is fraudulent. We request verification of source documentation and certified county files to compare." "Everything in our binder is legitimate," Karen snapped, "unlike his so-called easement, which is being abused." Gina turned her head slowly. "Sit down, Karen." The temperature in the room dropped. The commission chair gestured to the clerk. "Retrieve the original 1976 easement file." The clerk returned with a thin but official-looking folder embossed with the county seal. The chairwoman opened it and frowned deeply, flipping between the real document and the HOA's binder of nonsense. "This is curious," she said. "The signatures differ, and these technical terms." She pointed to the HOA's document. "Why is there terminology referencing hydraulic grading from the 2000s? The easement was recorded decades earlier." I couldn't help myself. I whispered loud enough for Karen to hear, "You should have hired a better forger." She inhaled sharply, indignant. Then something unexpected happened. A man seated at the far right, someone I hadn't noticed before, raised his hand and spoke quietly. "Madam Chair, if I may, I was on the HOA board until 3 months ago." He stood. His hands trembled slightly. "I want to state for the record," he continued, "that President Bexley instructed members to fabricate evidence to invalidate Mr. Colebrook's easement. She pressured us to sign statements we knew were false. When I refused, He swallowed. "She threatened to report me to my employer." A ripple of shock moved through the room. Even the clerk's pen stopped scratching. Karen shot to her feet. "That is a lie. He was removed for misconduct and—" "Sit down." The chairwoman snapped the words like a whip. Gina leaned toward me and murmured, "This is what happens when tyrants overplay their hand." The commission chair lifted the fraudulent agreement again, held it up to the light, and exhaled loudly. "This document contains discrepancies consistent with deliberate forgery. We will be referring it to the sheriff's office." Karen's face drained of color. The board members beside her shifted uncomfortably like rats, realizing the ship was taking on water. Gina stepped forward. "We request immediate dismissal of all HOA objections and confirmation that the easement remains fully valid." The chairwoman nodded. "Granted." A gavel struck wood, just like that. But the real entertainment came after adjournment. As we exited the building, 2 deputies entered with evidence bags and a clipboard. They walked straight toward the commissioner's chamber. I didn't look at Karen. I didn't need to. Her silence was loud enough. As I stepped outside, Gina nudged me. "They got sloppy," she said. "People driven by ego always do. And now?" "Now," she said, "we dig deeper. There's a bigger scheme here." And standing in the parking lot, staring at the cluster of HOA SUVs like they were crime scene exhibits, I realized she was right. This wasn't just about a road. They wanted my land. Badly. And they were willing to commit felonies to get it. The day of the court hearing arrived with the kind of sharp, electric tension you can almost taste in the air. I woke early, suited up, not in a business suit, but in clean jeans, a dark button-up, and boots scrubbed to the color they had the day I bought them. Gina said it made me look respectably dangerous. I wasn't sure what that meant, but based on her smile, I assumed it worked in my favor. The courthouse parking lot was already buzzing when I pulled in. Reporters, curious residents, a few HOA members who looked like they'd rehearsed their expressions of wounded innocence in the mirror all morning. And then there was Karen, standing by her Lexus, hair sprayed to architectural rigidity, wrapped in a powder blue blazer that screamed, "I'm innocent," and also, "I ruin people for fun." She spotted me and lifted her chin like a queen, acknowledging a peasant who'd overstepped by daring to exist. "This ends today," she said coldly. "Yes," I replied, "but not how you're hoping." Inside, the courtroom felt packed. The judge, a gray-haired man named Redmond, who had a reputation for tolerating exactly zero nonsense, entered with a stare that could shave wood. Everyone rose, everyone sat, and then the fight truly began. The prosecutor started with a simple, devastating summary. The HOA had undertaken a coordinated campaign of harassment, forgery, intimidation, trespassing, and obstruction of a state-recorded easement. They introduced the forged road use agreement, the fake signature, the altered technical language, the witness statements, the landscape crew trespassing, the midnight barricade operation, the physical altercation, and even the coordinated wave of false county complaints. Then they played the footage. My footage. The entire courtroom watched as 4 HOA-affiliated men installed steel posts into the ground, welding like rogue construction workers, speaking openly about orders from the HOA. They watched the moment one of them grabbed me. They watched him charge with the improvised hammer. They watched me defend myself with controlled precision. When the video ended, the courtroom was silent. Redmond looked at Karen like he'd just discovered mold under his sink. Then came the best part. Gina took the floor. She moved through evidence like a surgeon, showing timelines, documents, maps, timestamps, photos, and county records. She presented Brooks' certified statement confirming forgery. She presented official testimony from the former HOA board member who had confessed to being pressured. She presented the real expert's analysis of the fraudulent document, the mismatched typefaces, the incorrect terminology, the digital origin tags proving the file had been created in the past month. She even projected an enlarged screenshot from one of my hidden cameras, Karen standing near the road 2 nights before the welding incident, flashlight in hand, pointing at the ground while instructing 2 of the men where to dig. Karen slammed her hands on the table. "This is taken out of context." The judge leaned forward. "Ms. Bexley, sit down before you add contempt of court to your list of problems." She sat, shaking with fury. Then her attorney, poor soul, tried to mount a defense. He claimed the forged documents were misunderstandings. The nighttime blockade was a safety modification. The physical altercation was self-defense from unpredictable property owners. Gina responded by replaying the part of the footage where his client's men bragged about shutting Mr. Colebrook down. The judge stared at the defense table. "Are you seriously trying to pass this off as legitimate action?" Karen's attorney wilted like a houseplant left in a sauna. After hours of testimony, arguments, and evidence, Judge Redmond rubbed his temples and issued the kind of ruling that could be felt physically. "Ms. Bexley," he said slowly, "this court finds substantial evidence that you orchestrated a large-scale campaign involving harassment, fraudulent documentation, illegal construction, physical intimidation, and conspiracy to interfere with lawful property rights. Your actions were reckless, malicious, and in direct violation of state law." Karen's jaw trembled. The judge continued. "Effective immediately, you are sentenced to 10 years in state prison for conspiracy, forgery, obstruction, and attempted coercion. You will also be held personally liable for damages." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Redmond wasn't finished. "As for the individuals involved in the roadside blockade," he nodded toward the 2 detained men, 3 years and 5 years respectively for unlawful obstruction and assault. And the HOA organization is ordered to pay damages totaling $270,000 to Mr. Colebrook, plus all legal fees. The gavel dropped like thunder. Karen launched to her feet. "This is a miscarriage of justice. He manipulated." 2 deputies grabbed her arms. She shrieked as they cuffed her, her voice rising to a banshee pitch. "You can't do this. This is my community. He doesn't belong here. I will appeal. I will." The doors closed behind her screams. The courtroom exhaled collectively. Gina packed her documents with a small, satisfied smirk. "Well," she said, "that went about how I expected." I stared at the now silent room. 10 years. "She earned all of them," she replied, patting my shoulder. "Let's get out of here before the HOA tries another stunt." When we stepped outside into the bright daylight, the crowd parted. Some people nodded respectfully. Others avoided my eyes. A few HOA members looked like their world had ended, along with their president's freedom. I didn't celebrate, but I did breathe. For the first time in days, I really breathed. When the dust finally settled, the world felt eerily quiet. Not peaceful, just emptied of all the static that had been buzzing around my property for weeks. The next morning, I woke up later than usual, brewed coffee without checking my perimeter cameras first, and stepped onto the porch with a sensation I hadn't felt in a long time. Actual ease. No SUVs lurking, no HOA soldiers welding in the dark. Just the wind carrying the smell of pine. But ease wasn't the same as safety, and I wasn't planning on relying on a court ruling alone to keep my land secure. By noon, a small engineering crew I'd hired arrived with survey equipment strapped to their truck. We walked the ridge together, evaluating alternative exit routes, places the old logging paths could be widened, where the slope dropped just enough to carve out a second driveway. It wasn't cheap, but freedom rarely is. By sunset, we marked the path for a new access road that would bypass Ridgepoint Glens entirely. 2 weeks later, the new driveway was built, smooth gravel, reinforced drainage lines, and a clean exit straight to a public county road. No HOA, no gates, no self-appointed tyrants. Just open road. The old exit, the one they had tried to choke off, stood empty and silent. I decided it deserved a monument of sorts, a reminder not of fear, but of victory earned the hard way. So, I installed a metal sign at the exact spot where the steel posts once stood. Simple bold letters cut into the plate read, "Private Road. HO abuse will be prosecuted." A bit dramatic? Maybe. But after everything they'd done, I figured the sign was just honest advertising. Within days, neighbors from the outer edges of Ridgepoint Glens started approaching me, not with hostility, but with quiet questions. How did I fight them? How did I prove the forgeries? Could they leave the HOA too? I answered what I could, offered copies of my filings, and pointed them toward Gina. I never planned to be a one-man anti-HOA consultant, but somehow, that's what I became. The story spread across the county. A local legal journal even asked to do a feature about the case, calling it a defining example of homeowner rights versus HOA overreach. I didn't care about fame, but I liked the idea of my nightmare turning into a warning sign for others. One evening, as I drove down my brand new driveway, I slowed at the crossroads and looked back up the ridge. The sun was setting behind the tree line, painting everything gold. It hit me then. How close I'd come to losing control of my own land, how relentless the pressure had been, and how damn good it felt to stand on the other side of it. I didn't raise a glass or make a speech. I just rested both hands on the steering wheel and muttered to myself, "They fought for control. I fought for my home. Guess who won?" Then I drove on, leaving the old road and the ruins of Ridgepoint Glens' arrogance behind me for good.